This is CBC Here and Now.
Another windy day today, but there is some relief on the way.
A number of choices for youth workers went on strike early this morning.
We're just trying to have a contract that would compare to our community counterparts.
We'll hear from the picket line coming up.
Good evening, welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Peter Cowan. The province rolled out what it's calling a 5-point plan to help with the rising cost of living. It's spending about $20 million, most of it targeted towards low-income people. Here's the details. So, for the 160,000 people who receive the income supplement, they'll get an extra 10%. So someone receiving the maximum payments will get about an extra $100 a year. The seniors benefit is also increasing by 10%, so the maximum payment there is going up by about $140 a year. And if you're on income support, you'll get an extra $400 for a family, $200 for an individual, but it's just a one-time payment. The finance minister says they wanted to target low-income people who, she says, have been the hardest hit by rising fuel and food prices.
Those things are challenging for us, but not near as challenging as they are for the most vulnerable. So, as I said, helping those on income support, those with lower incomes with the income supplement, seniors with the seniors benefit was essential. And the first opportunity we had, we made sure that we were addressing their concerns first.
Now, the NDP says targeting low-income people is the right idea, but this is just a Band-Aid. It's not fixing the structural issues.
For God's sake, if it's just going to come down to these levers that we pull every now and again, we're not fixing the systemic problem, which comes down to a lack of income, and that people who are on income support, seniors who are on fixed income, people who are working at a legislated poverty wage.
Well, but what about people who aren't low income? Well, there are two programs to help you. As long as you're willing to make a big investment, the government is extending a $2,500 rebate for buying an electric car. You'll get half that amount if it's a plug-in hybrid. So far, only about 100 people have taken advantage of the program since it was first launched last year. And it's going to double the incentive to convert from oil heat to electricity. You'll get $5,000.
For the average citizen out here who are going to be impacted dramatically, the business community here who are impacted dramatically, and what that has, the effect that has on taxation, what it has on services being provided. So this, while it's welcome that it addresses, some supports for a small part of our vulnerable sector in our society, it doesn't do what's needed here to really ensure that people here can get over this major crisis when it comes to the cost of living.
Now, if you're curious what the hike in oil prices means for the province's coffers, the finance minister said today, this year the government expects to receive an extra $70 million in this fiscal year, money that will go to reducing the deficit and covering some extra COVID costs.
Premier Andrew Furey wasn't at the legislature today. He was in Ottawa for what he calls a historic moment to witness Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's direct appeal to Canadians and parliamentarians. Speaking to the House of Commons via video call, Zelensky asked for stronger measures to thwart Russia's invasion.
Please do not stop in your efforts. Please expand your efforts to bring back peace. I am grateful to Canadian people, and I am confident that together we will overcome and will be victorious.
As Zelensky made his virtual address to Parliament, Moscow announced that it was banning Prime Minister Justin Trudeau from entering Russia. Earlier in the day, Canada slapped new sanctions on 15 Russian officials close to the country's leader, Vladimir Putin. Since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Canada has sanctioned more than 900 individuals and other entities. So why did the Premier feel it was important to be in Ottawa today? Well, Andrew Furey spoke with local reporters this afternoon after seeing Zelensky speak, and he said his reason was twofold: to support the Ukrainian crisis and to advocate for the province's oil industry.
The primary purpose of this trip is to have a more fulsome understanding of how Newfoundland and Labrador can be involved in both a compassionate response to the Ukrainian crisis and equally a response from the energy sector, and how we can help to ensure that our product is well represented in terms of allowing NATO, Europe, and other people around the world to become more energy sovereign with respect to the Russian supply of crude and petroleum products.
Now, there are a number of people in Newfoundland and Labrador who are trying to get their parents out of Europe, but they're running into roadblocks. And I asked the Premier when refugees can expect some real help. His answer is coming up in about 30 minutes on Here and Now.
Pretty quiet day out there today. Windy though. We're continuing to see these winds over the last couple of days, and the good news is that we do have some relief on the way. Taking a look at what's happening, we've got some cold air up across Labrador, and some of that colder air is making its way down towards Newfoundland and Labrador. Temperatures in some areas well below zero today. If I zoom in even more, now that we've got that daylight, we can really see that ice offshore right now, and the winds are pushing that ice further offshore. Now, one thing that we've been talking about and didn't get to talk about last year, but was the icebergs. Now, there are lots of icebergs in and around. This is the analysis from Environment Canada. But like I said, those winds are pushing them further offshore. Now, by the time we get into next week, it does look like we should see a more favorable pattern for pushing them closer. But overall, that's what the picture is looking like. Now, on the wind front, that ridge of high pressure there to the west, that's going to move in and relieve us from some of this wind. I'll have the full details coming up.
Thanks, Asho. 9 staff members from Choices for Youth are on strike. The new NAPE members took job action early this morning. They say a lack of a collective bargaining agreement and pay are the two main factors in walking off the job. NAPE's president is accusing the not-for-profit of union busting, a claim that Choices for Youth denies. Caught in the crossfire, at-risk young people living in a safe and stable place. Jeremy Eaton now with that story.
Standing outside the Choices for Youth office in St. John's, striking workers seek support from the public. At the center of it is The Lily, a Choices for Youth 14-unit supportive living space for youth aged 16 to 24, staffed 24 hours a day. All 9 staff walked off the job at 12:01 this morning. Upon hearing the news, former Lily resident Jessica Wall came down to show her support.
Without the staff there, I honestly don't think I would have made it through my 20s and be here today to be able to not just speak to you and help them, but just be able to just like wake up every day and feel like I'm okay to be here in the world.
The 9 workers at the Lily approached NAPE about 2 years ago. They were able to form a union about 9 months ago, but they haven't been able to reach a deal.
It's trying to have a fair contract, so we've been at the negotiating table for a year or more now. We really were not looking for it to come to a strike, but Choices has really left us with no options.
Pay is one of the stumbling blocks. The workers say they have not had any raises.
It sucks. We want to be working, right? We want to be there helping the young people as best we can. You know, it's been 12 years at the Lily since any of them have gotten a raise, right? 12 years. Not a cent has been given in terms of, cost of living raises or any kind of wage increase.
One of the challenging issues was that we didn't offer the Lily staff the same wage increases as others received across the agency. And at this point, I will say that that is completely false. We certainly have offered the Lily staff the same compensation adjustments.
Among those walking the picket line with the strikers was NAPE President Jerry Earle. He says that offering the non-unionized staff more money was unfair.
This is an absolute union busting move because we have 2 other certification orders in actually for groups with Choices for Youth. This is sending a message to those 2 groups. This employer actually went to the Labour Relations Board and said if you are not a permanent full-time worker, you don't have the right to be part of a union.
Earle says NAPE is challenging that, while Choices for Youth management says it takes issue with what Earle is saying.
I absolutely disagree with his approach and the language he used and the harsh language he used to describe our organization, which again, our focus is prioritizing young people in our community.
As much as we want to be back at work, we know that this is where we need to be because in order for us to be at work, we need to be treated fairly.
Both sides have told CBC that they are happy to head back to the bargaining table when the other side is ready. In the meantime, people on Duckworth Street might have to get used to this scene for a while. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, coming up later on the show, we're going to hear more from Jessica Wall, a young woman who spent 5 years living at the Lily, the center at the heart of this strike and of Jeremy's news report that you just watched. And she's going to speak openly about how the Lily saved her life.
The provincial government has started updating a new COVID hub website. There have been 2 more deaths since the province's last update on Friday. There are currently 27 people in hospital. That's up from 22 in the last date, and it's a record high. 6 of the 27 cases are in critical care. There have been 2,200 new confirmed cases since Friday's update. Instead of press releases, Public Health will be updating COVID numbers on the government COVID dashboard website on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Well, returning to the House of Assembly, where CBC's investigation on homelessness in Happy Valley Goose Bay was raised by the opposition today. Last night on the show, we brought you to the Labrador Inn. The manager there says there are still nearly daily calls for the police. That's 4 weeks after Minister John Abbott vowed to provide immediate support. Interim Tory leader David Brazel questioned how the hotel turned for-profit shelter has operated without trained staff for so long.
Are left unsupported, staff are left unsupported. The minister's reaction was to hire 2 security guards. I asked the minister, why did he allow this department to ignore the situation and let it get to this point?
I was up in Happy Valley Goose Bay recently, met with the manager of the Labrador Inn. We talked about the issues that he and his staff are facing. We're working with him and his staff to make sure they have the supports in place to address some of the issues that the member mentioned. At the same time, the residents who are at the inn are also supported by the Housing Hub, which is run by the Nunavut government. So we have a lot of supports in place on the ground, working as well with Labrador Grenfell Health to make sure those residents are supported where they are and as they need their support.
Well, now to a long-standing issue in Labrador West, the lack of seniors facilities. Seniors often have to wait for a spot in long-term care away from their hometown, but some students at J.R. Smallwood Middle School in Wabush have come up with a possible solution. They've created plans for a $100 million 30-room facility. They did the research, they met with politicians, and they're ready to make their pitch. Here's their report.
Should seniors have to leave Labrador West? We started our project on seniors living by interviewing members of our community. 91% of the people surveyed felt there is not appropriate housing for seniors in Labrador West. Over 99% of the people surveyed think there should be a seniors home in Labrador West. We looked at several possible designs. In the end, the H-shaped and the L-shaped designs seemed best suited to our plan, having one building with a section dedicated to assisted living apartment-style rooms and a section dedicated for long-term care patients. After weighing the pros and cons of both designs, we agreed the L-shaped design would work best in Labrador West.
As a class, we felt that an area at Tanya Lake would be a great place for the seniors living complex. After surveying the land and discussing the benefit of having a facility in this area, we felt it was a great choice. There is a walking trail there for the residents to enjoy and a wonderful view of the lake.
Our class had a virtual meeting with Mr. Jordan Brown, our MHA for Labrador West. We shared our project and expressed the concerns our class has. We were very pleased to hear that all the concerns are being heard by the provincial government and conversations are happening around this issue at government levels.
Many of the students in this class have a personal connection. Unfortunately, in Labrador West, there is no seniors living facilities. And so for some of them, it means their grandparents either have to live in the hospital or sometimes have had to be sent away to care facilities outside of our region.
So my pop just passed away waiting for a bed in long-term care at the hospital here because he didn't want to leave Lab West. So I really think we need a seniors home.
These big people in the government and the town, they heard us and they answered our questions and they kind of promised us that they would take this into consideration and they kind of gave us advice to continue on with our project.
What a great project.
Now, as we reported last week, the former Mary March Museum in Grand Falls, Windsor has a new name. It's now known as the Demasduit Regional Museum.
Yeah, and the move is welcome news to some Indigenous leaders in the province. Chief Michel Joe of the Mi'kmaq First Nation says it's a sign of progress, and he has some more changes in mind.
is finally recognizing, the people that live on this land a long time before John Cabot showed up. So it's finally starting to happen. It's been a long time in coming, but right now I'm so happy that it's here. And I hope people, help people to fully understand and appreciate the history of the Bialik people. And of course that's what the interpretation is all about anyway. I realize there's other things in there, but primarily the interpretation center is focused on the Bialik people and the plight of Bialik people. So yeah, it's an appropriate name. You've taken names, Mi'kmaq names off the land and use English names, and this is no different. They only see it through their eyes. They don't see it as we see it and how we should be seeing it. The province is now coming around to that way of thinking. I think there are many more things that we need to change at this stage, and that's just one of them. This place, for instance, has always been called Conn River, and we call it Conn River because that's how we was told it was. But the real name for this place is Maui-Buvik, and I'm now in the process of asking government to change the names on the road sign to say Maui-Buvik First Nation, and because we have to do our part too as well. If we don't do our part, the government is not going to just say, well, they don't care anyway, and that's how I see it. That goes back to the outlawing of language. That goes back to the 1920s when Father St. Croix outlawed the Mi'kmaq language. So when you take away language, you take away a person's heart and soul, and we're forced to, I guess in a sense, look at things in English, but translate in our own minds what it means in Mi'kmaq. A nation's language is its heart and soul. This country have fought hard and long to have Quebec as the second language in this country, but there's other language besides French. There's hundreds of languages in this country, and sometimes I wonder why the hell we struggle so much to get people to recognize who we are, and what we're all about, and what we're trying to do. But at the same time, I think our obligation is to educate more and more people about what we're trying to do, who we are. And we can't always depend on government to do it, but we can help government to achieve what we want.
Westerly winds today, temperatures above zero. Now they're going to drop as we head through the day tomorrow. I'll have the full forecast coming up.
bad news for skiers. Marble Mountain is going to stay closed all this week. Staff at the hill are still working to repair lifts that were damaged last weekend. You can see how they had to help people there. Today, Marble says it's going to remain closed until Saturday, when it hopes to open just the Magic Carpet and beginners area. The Lightning Express lift has been repaired but needs a closer inspection before opening. The Newfie Bullet chairlift needs more work. It needs a new control board, but that's been hard to find since the manufacturer is no longer in business. Marble says it found the part in Europe and it should arrive in a week to 10 days.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Actually, one of the many reasons I like March, and not just because it's my birthday in March, but it's because the sun starts to get so much stronger. You know, a day like today where you get a little bit of sunshine, it really warms up the house, or if you go out for a walk, the sun on your face, like it starts to feel like it's got some oomph to it.
It really does, and that's really because of the sun angle and where it is on the horizon. So let's take a look at that. By March 1st, the sun angle is already at about 35 degrees. So as we get to June, it's at the highest. And basically spring will arrive on March 20th as of 1:03 p.m. Newfoundland daylight time. And we're really going to start to see that sun angle head a little bit further north as well. So that's when these temperatures that are quite cool actually feel really nice when it's sunny. Today was definitely something that we noticed. Temperatures were about 3 degrees. When that sun was shining, it felt much warmer than that in St. John's. Terra Nova, same thing, 2 degrees in Gander. As you head towards the west coast, temperatures a bit cooler this afternoon, hovering around 0 degrees for Corner Brook, and then minus teens, the story for a good chunk of Labrador except the southeast rather, where you saw those temperatures into the minus single digits. So it's still very windy out there. Winds are gusting right now upwards of 57 kilometers per hour in St. John's, 46 kilometers per hour in St. Anthony, and we're seeing that really all along the coast, even up across Makovic. Your gusts now out of the northwest are gusting around 70 kilometers per hour. So there is a big, significant wind chill for you, feeling more like minus 41, minus 25 in Cartwright, but just a bit of a wind chill, the story for the east. The west coast a little bit more since your temperatures are well below zero. It's feeling more like minus 13 in Corner Brook. Now, temperatures tonight are going to continue to drop as we see some of this colder air continue to sink a little bit further south, certainly for the northern peninsula, going down to minus 19 tonight in St. Anthony, minus 11 in Corner Brook. Most of the west coast will be sitting there. Central areas of the island looking at your temperatures into the minus teens, and then the south and east, particularly St. John's, you're looking at your winds around minus 8. Now, as that ridge of high pressure moves in, the winds will ease first in the west. They're going to stay quite breezy, though, along coastal areas of the province. Out of the west, somewhere between 30 to even 60 kilometers per hour for coastal areas of Labrador. So weather-wise, there isn't really a whole lot happening. We've been seeing some flurries here and there. West coast will see that continue. Central, even eastern areas of the island, you'll see the potential for a few flurries tonight. Then we should see some clearing skies, and then it will be quiet. Tomorrow, as that ridge of high pressure starts to move in, we'll start to notice that the winds will ease right across the board. By 4 a.m., you're already seeing those winds down to 15, 20 kilometers per hour, and that will be the story for most of the island tomorrow, even up across Labrador as well. A little later, though, for the north. But otherwise, it's a quiet day tomorrow. We're looking at some clouds that will linger into the afternoon. We may see a few flurries continue along the west coast, but overall, a pretty beautiful day on tap tomorrow. And even as we head into Thursday morning, we're looking at a little bit more flurry activity moving in late day for the southwest. As far as amounts go, not a whole lot to talk about. A trace to maybe 2 centimeters at the most in some of these flurries. Finally going to see some relief of that snow on the west coast. Temperatures tomorrow will be a little bit below zero. They may hover around zero, but overall you're looking at temperature near -1 for St. John. Same thing for Clarenville. Again, those winds light. Finally, 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. And then as you head towards central, you're looking at a degree or two cooler. about -3 for Grand Falls, Windsor. The west coast, particularly along the higher elevations, you may see a few flurries in the mix. And then northern peninsula, southeastern Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures in and around -8, -9 through the day. And even a mild day, Lab City looking at about -7 tomorrow with that potential for some flurries. Cooler though for Nain at -14. So that's a look at that. The ridge of high pressure moves fairly quickly, and we've got another system moving in for the weekend. I'll have those details coming up.
Well, Team Gushue made curling history on Sunday night as the first 3-member team to win the Brier. Now, they were short a player because teammate Mark Nichols was sidelined when he tested positive for COVID-19. We spoke with Mark last night, but tonight, Brad Gushue joins us. So first of all, congratulations on an epic performance under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you. Still pretty amazed that we made it happen. It was, I didn't think our chances were very good, but we were able to pull through.
Yeah, and you not only won the Brier, but you swept the playoffs, pardon the pun. You won every game. How did you do it?
To be honest, I think our expectations were lowered and we just used the cliche. We took one shot at a time. That one shot at a time mentality made it easier for us. And then when we started to make a few in a row, we were like, okay, maybe we could do this. And by the third game, we actually had things kind of figured out how to play together. And then, yeah, we just kind of got rolling, and it was a ton of fun. A lot of stress during the week as well. Obviously concerned about Mark and how we were going to perform with 3 players.
Yeah, it sounds like the fact that the pressure was kind of taken off because you went into it with low expectations might have helped you a bit.
Yeah, certainly. I think, and then on the other side, we were lacking a little bit of energy throughout the week coming back from the Olympics. And then when Mark got sick as well, that kind of gave us a little bit of a kind of motivation to play the last few games. So I think the extra motivation combined with the lower expectations, it was a perfect storm to really go out there and perform at a high level.
And so were you surprised by your performance in the end?
Yeah, I was. When we first heard the news about Mark, I talked to my wife and she said, you still have a chance. And I'm like, yes, we still have a chance. But we went from, a 60 or 70% chance of winning this to probably a 1% chance. And, it may have been a little bit higher than that, but not much. It really is quite remarkable for 3 players to beat 3 of the top teams in the world that are playing really well, to have gotten to a Brier playoff. And it's still mind blowing to me.
For sure. And you also delivered the trophy to Mark after the game. Tell me why you wanted to do that.
Yeah, they came in, we were in the locker room with the trophy, and they came in, they said, do you guys want us to take this? And I said, no, I'd love the opportunity for it to come back and let Mark see it, let him be part of our celebration as much as we could. Obviously, we couldn't embrace him or really party or do anything that night. So we dropped it at his door and let him spend the night with it. And it was a pretty cool moment just to see him open up the door. And, there was some tears there and some excitement. So it was cool.
How did you celebrate after the win?
To be honest, there wasn't much because, we were all close contacts with Mark and we didn't want to put anybody else at risk. So it was really just me and Jeff and my wife and kids that went back to the room and had a drink or two and just chatted about what we pulled off. It was definitely the most subdued celebration we've had after a major championship win. But, it's a situation we're in, and I'm sure we're going to celebrate it at some point down the road.
And when I spoke with Mark yesterday, we talked about how emotional this year has been for the team. You had your big Olympic comeback after 16 years and the strain even of having to isolate away from your families for a while. Then you have the emotional bronze medal win. You come back and you're down a player for the Brier. And Mark said that adversity and those challenges, he thinks, brings you closer together as a team. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it definitely does. It has been a very emotional year. I think it's just been the the pressure that we felt really since the end of November when we started the trials right up until now. You know, we've been trying to isolate and avoid getting COVID. We went to the Olympics, we came home, we tried to avoid getting COVID before the Brier, and then Mark gets it and we have to deal with all that. It's just felt like a constant pressure on us for about 3 months. And, you know, we're all old enough and have enough perspective too to realize what we're doing is pretty cool. And it, you know, it does bring out that emotion.
And what comes next? Because you have the Worlds next month. That's another big deal. Can you talk about what's coming next for you?
Yeah, it's a quicker turnaround than I would like. We got about 2.5 weeks before we head down to Vegas. We'll be down there for about a week and a half. And then we leave Vegas and we go right to Toronto for the Players' Championship. And then we have about 2 weeks off before we head back to Alberta for the Champions Cup. And then our season is finally over, which I'm looking forward to, because it has been a stressful 3 months and a lot of time away from family and friends and a lot of time isolating. So I'm anxious to get the season over with.
Yeah, well, that will be a well-deserved break when you get to it. Until then, we look forward to seeing you perform at the Worlds in Las Vegas. Brad Gushue, thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Jason Piercy, and I spent the last dozen-ish years selling houses to our friends and our families in and around our communities. But a few months back, I had a pretty big wrench thrown into my life. Well, into my motorcycle, actually, and it wasn't a wrench. It was like a mid-size SUV. Point, anything can happen and everything can change in an instant. So, I'm gonna hang out with the one and only Adam Walsh on Thursday, March the 17th, and co-host Crosstalk. And we wanna hear from you about your life-changing moments. So, send an email to crosstalk@cbc.ca, and if Adam gives me enough time, I'll talk to you on the 17th.
Premier Andrew Furey was in Ottawa today instead of at the House of Assembly to see the President of Ukraine's historic address to Parliament. Vladimir Zelensky asked Canadian politicians to imagine Vancouver under siege or the CN Tower being bombed. There are residents here who are trying to get their Ukrainian parents to move to St. John's, but the red tape means they need to apply to come here as tourists. And I asked the Premier what is being done to actually help the refugees.
It's not the time for paperwork. It's more the time for open hearts and open arms. We can figure out the paperwork afterwards. I think, Anthony, stay tuned later this week. Minister Byrne and I will have a further announcement of how we think we can play an important part in helping these displaced refugees, up to 2.2 to 2.4 million people right now. That's an incredible need. And I think Newfoundland and Labrador can really play a strong role in welcoming these refugees.
With all due respect, Premier, almost 3 weeks into this war, unless it's your spouse or child, you still have to go to the same system that existed before this war actually started. And I guess, I know from a previous lifetime that you understand what happens in places of crisis when there are political delays, perhaps more than a lot of other premiers from your time in Haiti. And I guess the guts of my question, when are the provinces and the federal government going to get their act together to actually provide some real help? I mean, this is entering the third week. We're seeing millions of people literally running away from destruction. And we're saying, okay, if you want to come to Canada, most of you are going to be considered tourists. I mean, it seems to be a big lag time.
Yeah, no, and fair point. I mean, I have been in refugee camps. I understand that the issues that exist, especially around the humanity that exists, the pressures that people are under. And my chats with Minister Fraser and other ministers in the federal system, Newfoundland and Labrador is a bit ahead of everybody else in setting up their own desk internally. I'm not saying that there's any kind of quick fix. I do appreciate the need and the acuity of the need. But again, stay tuned later this week. We're hoping to have an announcement on Thursday that will help, from our provincial perspective, take the first step of having a Ukrainian desk here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And how can we better position that, if you will, in Europe to ensure that we are allowing these refugees a place to call home. I can't speak, of course, Anthony, to the Canadian minister. Ultimately, he is responsible for some of the issues you've described, but certainly he's heard my voice today about why we think it's important to eliminate those barriers. And I'm confident with Minister Byrne and I that we can better position our province.
Now, tomorrow on Here Now, we'll have the story of a man who's desperately trying to get his parents to move here, but the regulations don't match the urgency of their crisis. Well, once the Newfoundland and Labrador Ukrainian immigration desk opens, it's going to be busy. Russia has intensified its bombardment on Kiev and other cities. Thousands of women, children, and the elderly continue to flee to the western part of the country for safety. David Kama now has the details from Lviv.
We will soon approach 3 million is the number of people who have fled Ukraine going into some of those neighboring countries. Very often children, mothers, very few fathers because, of course, fighting age men, those between the ages of about 18 and 55 are being told they need to stay in the country. But those who can leave and want to leave often end up in transit facilities like this. This is the Lviv train station, and we've seen today people arriving from the capital, Kiev and Kharkiv, where there have been very intense fighting.
This is my grandfather, Grigory, and he survived the Second World War. He survived, all the atrocities which had been happening, literally in Kiev. He was fleeing Kiev, his homeland, and this is the second time he has to flee.
It's in areas over here that those who do arrive are offered a quick meal, but the idea is not to stay here. While some may try to remain in the city, the idea is so many people coming in with small children and babies to get food in their tummies, essentially, and then move them to Poland. And you see the buses that are there to be able to try to do that, rows and rows and rows of buses, and we've just continued to see them leaving throughout the course of the day. Kiev, the capital, has announced a curfew, 35 hours, and that is perhaps because they're expecting an escalation of the Russian attacks, which have destroyed so much of that city and cost lives.
We will defend our city. It's our homes. We never think to leave. It's our homes. We defend our children, family, our buildings, our city, and our future of Ukraine.
This also comes on a day in which the leaders of Slovenia and Poland visit Kiev, the capital, and the president, and a remarkable show of support from European Union nation leaders. David Coleman, CBC News, Lviv, Ukraine.
Now back to a story here at home and the strike at Choices for Youth. 9 workers at the Lily, which is a 14-bed supportive housing model for youth age 16 to 24, are currently on strike. Management has stepped in to help run the centre, but one former resident hopes the strike doesn't go on too long. Jessica Wall lived at the Lily for 5 years, and when she heard about today's strike, she went down to show her support. She spoke with Jeremy Eaton about how the centre saved her life.
It was major in the development for me. It was major for my healing from my childhood traumas and my adolescent traumas. I resided at the Lily for 5 years, and during my stay there, the staff, they did phenomenal work. They helped me with my mental health and navigate getting diagnoses, and they came to appointments with me. They helped navigate my traumas and get me into programs. It was the first place that I had ever felt like I lived in a home where I was wanted and belonged. The staff there always took the time to understand what I was trying to articulate, even though I didn't know at the time how to do that. They went above and beyond always to make sure that they turned that building into a home and not just a shelter over my head. And I really attribute their work to me staying alive, because I struggle with suicidal ideations and borderline and a few other mental health disorders that they really helped me navigate and get to the point where I felt like I was deserving and worthy of living. And without the staff there, I honestly don't think I would have made it through my 20s and be here today to be able to not just speak to you and help them, but just be able to just wake up every day and feel like I'm okay to be here in the world. And I definitely attribute that to the staff, 1000%. I hope that the higher ups within Choices really truly understand that the staff need to be treated with fear, to get a fair contract. And I really think that I really hope that this strike doesn't have to go on for too long, because I think it's ridiculous that they're even at this point. Anyway, I stand with the staff of the Lily now and always.
Well, it's been 2 years since the pandemic began, and now, as most provinces, including Newfoundland and Labrador, are lifting restrictions, a new survey finds Canadians are split on that issue. The poll was done by the Angus Reid Institute in partnership with the CBC. Now, 36% of people polled believe we're opening up too quickly, while 38% believe we're opening at the right pace. 1 in 5 believe we're not doing it quickly enough. Well, in our new series, Habitats, host Andy Bullman is exploring how different landscapes in the province are changing, evolving, and in some cases, disappearing.
Well, tonight we're heading to Cape St. Mary's, which is famously home to tens of thousands of birds.
Now, that number grows this time of year around St. Patrick's Day. That's when the gannets come back to the Cape.
Gannets used to be only on that. It's not really, we call it a sea stack, but it is joined on the bottom. But gannets used to be only on that, and they've expanded. Like we have pictures back from before '97, and there was no gannets on the mainland. They were only on that sea stack. So the numbers are going up, but the first bird to be threatened really would be the gannet with global warming and the temperature of the water going up and everything, because these ones, and Cape St. Mary's ones, because we're so far south.
Yeah.
So we're the ones that notice it most. When they made this a reserve in 1983, that was a big thing for the Maoris too. Before there was a reserve, boats were allowed to set their gill nets here. And a lot of Maoris used to get caught in the gill nets. Yeah. When they made it a reserve and there's a big protected area around it, nets are still outside and that's perfect. Fishing is a very important part of it. But this is protected right here. We get students coming in. It's the first thing the students come back in, no matter what they're doing.
They're panicked.
Masters, PhD, still come in and say about the dead babies. That's it. That's the first thing. Especially if you're sitting down here all day and say one of the adults is gone for 12 hours, and that chick don't move for 12 hours. I can tell you right now, there's a really, really good chance that there's no dead babies there.
Okay. Oh yeah, sorry, that exact one is moving now.
Yeah. So the gannets will come, we usually say Paddy's Day, but this year was April. So the gannets will come in April. You'll start seeing the first chick, you'll start seeing the first egg 3rd, 4th of May. The first chick is usually 6th, 7th of June.
Is that a big exciting day?
Well, listen, the competition here is the first egg, first chick. That's the way it is.
And you compete with each other?
Oh, big time. Yeah. Wanda back in the building. Wanda see the first chick this year, so that's the oldest chick.
Why are these ecological reserves so important? What do they do exactly for the bird population?
Yeah, well, listen, I don't know years ago, but nobody's going, if this wasn't a reserve, the biggest thing for us in the winter time to be hunting sea ducks within the place that they're not allowed to hunt them now. But for the gannets and all that, it keeps people from going down among them. Like if we're here, we keep control of where they go, and I'm sure if we weren't here, people would be probably walking down among the birds trying to get a better picture and all that. So it is protecting that way. And the marine portion, because like I said, the gill nets are not sat in the reserve. It protects the mares and the gannets and that when they're fishing close to the nests. And the plant life. Like again, if we were not here, I'm sure there'd be people driving out here in ATVs or trucks, and there'd be everything roaming around her. So yeah, it's good. And like reserves are not everywhere, so we're not taking up the whole island of Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. So there's so many reserves, so they are important and we need them.
Well, you're finally going to be happy if you don't like the wind tomorrow, but we do have another little system that's going to move in as we head through Wednesday evening. That area of high pressure moves very quickly, and that is going to bring some snow to parts of the west coast as we head into Thursday morning. Well, some flurries really. And through the afternoon, basically on Thursday, not a whole lot happening. We will see those clouds on the increase, but then southwestern portions of the island will start to see some light snow. Same thing with Lab West as we get into the evening hours on Thursday. Temperatures across Labrador are going to stay mild again, but -3 for Lab City, -2 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and then we've got those temperatures above 0 on Thursday for the island, anywhere between 1 to 4 degrees really. Again, you'll see that snow or flurries move in late day. Eventually, we'll see that for eastern areas of the island as well. That system will continue to move in. It'll start quite chilly, but as the low moves through on Friday, it's going to bring back that southerly flow, and that means some of the warmer temperatures will move in as well. Mainly snow, the story up across Labrador, and then for the northern peninsula, higher elevations may see some snow to start, but eventually that will transition to rain as that low moves through. Look at the temperatures on Friday, back up between 5 to 9 degrees for a good chunk of Newfoundland, and then even the northern peninsula. You're looking at your temperatures around 2 degrees. You may stay on the snow side of this. Again, it will completely depend on the track, but temperatures across Labrador again will stay near 0 or just a few degrees below. Even across Lab City, you're looking at your temperature around -4 to start the weekend, -11 up across Labrador, actually, or up across Nain rather, and it looks like a pretty nice day. After that, Friday, windy conditions as well as that area of low pressure moves in. Then we get into Saturday. It does look like some rain will continue through the afternoon. And then Sunday, back down near or a few degrees below 0 by the time we get into the evening hours. And that means we'll change back over to the potential for a few flurries. Now for central Newfoundland, like I said, that snow moving in late day Thursday. By Friday, that changes to rain. We drop back down with the potential for flurries, but temperatures should hover between 2 and 3 degrees as we get through the weekend. And for western Newfoundland, a similar forecast, probably more gray skies on the way for your Sunday. Now for eastern Labrador, you're looking at the potential for some sunshine for Saturday, and then flurries, the story for Labrador. Our weather photo of the day today, this is some students from Grossmoran Academy cleaning Mike's driveway. The whole school was out today in Rocky Harbour helping the community for Education Week. What a great shot there, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing that photo. If you have any, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
All right, kids, so I'll give you Nape's phone number before the end of the show. You could get organized. Just kidding, of course. What a great shot.
Lovely.
Like
nice to see that.
It's like a Newfoundland Norman Rockwell moment. What a beauty.
He gets a clean driveway. They get a good amount of exercise and enjoy some
education.
outside time. It's win-win.
That's right.
And not to mention a moment of fame on this very program.
Correct.
Very well done. It's so weird to see that because I was sort of listening to Ashley's forecast and sort of looking the way things are in St. John's, where that weekend obliterated every flake of snow. And you see other parts of Newfoundland, Labrador covered with the white stuff, the shoveling there. Different bits everywhere.
Very, very different.
Tale of two winters.
For sure.
Well, that's it for us. Have a great night, everyone.
See you tomorrow.
Good night.